The sun rised again. And even if when we don't see it, it's like the divine, it's always there. So this special event is the fact that we've been given another day, another chance given to us to transform our world of thought and concept into a world of theosophy in action. So we talk about truth, beauty, and I would add joyfulness to that. They are the attribute of a marvelous divine seed, which home is the very core of our subtle heart. It is just waiting for us to open this shrine, to blossom and illuminate the world. So this morning session, we have two lecturers. The first one is Erwin Bomas. He is a member of the Theosophical organization Point Loma since 2006. Point Loma is a stream of theosophy coming from the same root, which is using best practice as working in groups, giving priority to public work, to do a living theosophia, and for each member to be a spiritual center. So I met with Erwin some 4 years ago. It was in Arden during one of the gatherings of ITC, International Theosophical Conference. And at this time, all the stream of theosophical actors who were present decided that it would be a good idea to share best practice. We call it cross-pollination, and that's exactly what we've been doing since, and that's also why we really welcome Erwin today. He is one of the speakers for the national and international lecture program, and he serves as speaker and host on International Theosophical Conference. He is a course leader on the Thinking Differently and Life Wisdom courses, and a study leader of the Lodge in Eindhoven, the Netherlands. He is one of the editors of the magazine Lucifer, the Light Bringer, and he is also one of the webmasters of the website blavatskyhouse.org. He is also serving as one of the directors of the board on the board of International Theosophy Conference. And in a professional context, Erwin works at Kennisnet Foundation, a national expertise center that advises schools on technology in education. Currently, he is involved in a project around the ethics of technology in education. And this morning, he will talk about expressing truth and beauty through compassion. So I'm pleased to call Erwin.
Namaste. Good morning. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu said, "Truthful words are not beautiful. Beautiful words are not truthful." This gives us a small excuse to start a bit ugly this morning. Because if you look at the world right now, at the disharmony, inequality, the inhumanity, or shortly the avidya, or ignorance that is behind it. And if you think at the same time of the truth and beauty of the Theosophia, the divine wisdom that is our inheritance, that holds all the answers to solve the world's problems. If you have these two perspectives in mind, and if you are honest, you must admit that we have to do a better job. And by we, I mean the Theosophical movement as a whole. And I say this without disregard or disrespect of the sincere work that is being done and of which we discovered some great examples during the course of this week. But I think we really have to do a better job. But how can we do that? We would like to share some ideas about that with you. Dear friends, let me first start by thanking the organizers of this wonderful convention for putting all this together and also for inviting us. And I say us because we cooperated on this presentation with a small team, including my friends Jenny and Bouke, who are also present here. So when we heard about the main theme of this convention, truth and beauty, the field beyond, we first thought, how can we recognize this field beyond? And our first point that we would like to address is that compassion is the expression of truth and beauty. And the question that soon follows is, well, how do we express truth and beauty ourselves? Through compassion. What does that mean? So that is what we would like to share. But to start with, let us share a definition of beauty and truth, and I think it beautifully aligns with what has been previously shared. So what is beauty? We can be very much inspired by beauty. For example, by the beauty of nature, when we experience a sunrise, the special moment Jacques just talked about, and in this case over the mountains. Or the myriad of stars of our Milky Way visible on a clear night sky. A lotus flower in full bloom. But also great works of human culture in art, music, or architecture, like the Lotus Temple of the Baha'i in New Delhi. My home country, the Netherlands, has a rich culture of painting with masterpieces that are recognized all over the world. Sometimes they depict universal meaning or symbolism, such as this painting of the famous 17th century painter Rembrandt, called The Philosopher in Meditation. So maybe you recognize the yin-yang, or the point in the circle. Another example is this painting from painter Johannes Vermeer, also from the 17th century. The Girl with the Pearl Earring, also called the Mona Lisa of the North. We're not always that modest. Vermeer's paintings are full of sacred geometry, golden ratios, etc. A more modern Dutch artist was Piet Mondrian, from the last century, also a Theosophist. With his art, he tried to inspire the viewer with the universal teachings he got from studying the secret doctrine. It is very abstract, with just vertical lines standing for the spiritual and horizontal lines symbolizing the material. Finally, a fine example of a mix of Western and Eastern culture thanks to the Silk Route. And of course there are endless examples of the inspiring beauty of a musical harmony or the beauty in literature. But although my perspective is that these are examples of beauty, there are always little differences in who likes what. As the saying goes, there's no accounting for taste. Now why is that? If we take the beauty of our art as an example, you could say there are 3 steps. First, the artist has an idea of beauty. He receives some form of inspiration. Secondly, he tries to express the inspiration in a material form. Let's say by creating a painting, but it can also be a sculpture, a musical symphony, or the design of a product. And thirdly, there's an observer, perceiving the work and experiencing something. To find the origin of beauty, you can ask yourself, where does the original idea of inspiration come from? According to Theosophy, you can look at different hierarchical levels, visible and invisible. If we make a threefold distinction, there is the spiritual world, the mental world, and the material world. The spiritual world is the cosmic picture gallery containing the symbolic ideals or original archetypes on a very abstract level. These spiritual and symbolic ideas are transformed in their passage, amongst others, through the mental plane and the astral light. We receive thoughts and feelings from the mental, respectively astral planes, that also leave an impression on our human brains on the material level. And these impressions are further communicated by us in the material world. Now, if we combine the first scheme of the idea, the artist, and the viewer with these three levels, we can distinguish these levels of seeing and understanding for each of these. The idea has a certain quality. It can be of a purely material beauty, like a scene of nature, or it can be an elegant formula, a beautiful ideal, or even a mystic experience of oneness. Of whatever level the original idea might be, the artist's interpretation of the idea is of the level the artist is at. Then the artist translates his interpretation into a piece of art. And finally, the observer viewing the piece of art experiences something depending on the level he is on. Now, we Theosophists know that instead of 3 levels, you can also use 7 levels of seeing and understanding for each of these 3 steps. So you see that there are quite some filters that determine how we experience the beauty of a piece of art, for example. This is why discussing beauty is sometimes difficult. The technician's perspective will probably differ quite a bit from that of a historian. But someone will also have a different experience himself, depending on his thoughts, the time of the day, or the size of the crowd in the museum. But if the artist is able to translate his inspiration in a pure form, and the observer is on a similar level, the observer might even resonate with the original idea. So there are some characteristics of beauty that inspire almost universally. What are those? Beautiful nature, art, or music show a certain harmony. There is a harmonious interrelation between the parts and the whole. Think of the arrangement of flower petals, the use of complementary colors in painting, or the Indian raga music that is tuned to the season, time, and atmosphere. Beauty in nature and art also express the imperishable, like the golden ratio, universal symbols, or eternal motives such as the inner struggle that is used in literature. For instance, in the Bhagavad Gita, but also in Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings or in Harry Potter. Finally, beauty in nature and art makes us identify with something bigger. It expands our consciousness, it inspires us, uplifts us, and opens us to the universal in ourselves. However, in the end, all outer manifested beauty is transitory and will perish sooner or later. But behind these expressions is the true beauty with capitals. The beauty that is omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable. Outer beauty is only a reflection, a manifestation of this beauty. And therefore, this expression will never reach the ideal. The golden ratio, for example, that we find in manifestation, in the relation of our phalanges, the ratios in our body and in our face, it is always an approximation. It is never exact. It is like the perfect circle or square. They only exist in the ideal, in the spiritual world. So you could say there are 3 levels of beauty. Beauty per se, with capitals, universal, eternal, and infinite. Then comes beauty with a capital B. It is the highest expression of the universal beauty. And finally, outer beauty, very transitory and part of the pairs of opposites. If our skin is white, we like to be brown. If we are brown, we like a fair skin, etc. Now let us go on to the next subject. Truth. Does not the same hold true for truth? We think so. Absolute truth is omnipresent, eternal, boundless, immutable as well. It is the one absolute reality which antecedes all manifested conditioned being, as is so beautifully written in the proem of the Secret Doctrine. It could only be dwarfed by any human expression. The real Tao cannot be named. Allah cannot be depicted. So we can distinguish the same 3 levels here. First, there is universal truth or absolute truth. Secondly, the highest expression of truth, we could call truth with a capital T. And thirdly, our personal truth. And those can rather be named for what they are, opinions. So we see the same applies for the perception of truth as for beauty. We can tune in on the world of ideas. Depending on our focus and orientation on one of the 7 aspects, or a mix of these, we resonate with these ideas and form our relative perspective on truth. But we are always a receiver and sender at the same time. We communicate our ideas even if we do not express them as words. Those ideas are received by others depending on their focus and orientation, be it emotional or intellectual or idealistic. Our ideas may resonate with others or not at all. So in the same way that we value beauty, each according to our level of perceiving, we value truth each according to our level of understanding. So we could say, as beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so truth is in the mind of the thinker. Now, because of this fact that we each have our own perspective on truth, there are some that claim that therefore the truth, or absolute truth, doesn't exist. This postmodern idea is actually a misunderstanding of truth with capitals. It is a general lack of vision on the universality of truth, and it leads to a lot of chaos and conflict, such as fake news. Understanding, however, that absolute truth is boundless, eternal, and immutable implies a few very important things. As the truth is boundless, there can only be one, because there are no 2 boundless principles possible. Although some try very hard to convince others of their version of the truth and try to force their opinions on others through modern media, the one truth will ultimately triumph. Secondly, as the truth is boundless, our understanding of it can and will always further develop. We should never mistake our truth for the truth. If we would recognize that all we know is a limited understanding of the truth, we would be much more modest about our opinions. The knowledge that we can never understand the entire boundless truth in its fullness prevents us from dogmatism, crystallization, and fanaticism. But, at the same time, being part of the boundless, we are, in essence, the boundless. So we have all the potential to progress in our understanding of the truth. We will get closer and closer to it when we progress to unfold our inner being. So for the sake of clarification, we used 3 levels before, but as we define the truth as boundless, we know that it is a simplification. There is, of course, an endless number of levels. You might say all inspiration comes from our inner teacher, the inner bodhisattva. And if we are able to identify with this inner teacher, that is our highest truth with a capital T. But that inspiration comes from the inner Buddha. And we can further develop to reach the stage of identification with our inner Buddha. Then we have reached a higher truth with a capital T. But beyond that, there is the level of what you might call our inner divinity, or God. So following this line of the hierarchy of compassion, the link never ends and goes on to the heart of the universe. So if we really understand the essence of truth, the essence of beauty, we see oneness. We will never reach the absolute truth as it is boundless, and we can always climb higher. But if we resonate on the highest, the Buddhic atmic level, on whatever step of evolution we are a link in this golden chain of Hermes and become a channel of inspiration ourselves, messengers of truth with a capital T. So we can now conclude that true beauty is omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable. And that the truth is omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable. And that truth and beauty per se imply oneness. So in other words, if we see truth and beauty per se, we see oneness. Or rather, we identify with the one, with the whole. And if we really identify with the whole, our thoughts and acts will be always in line with the whole. So that is why we state that compassion is the expression of truth and beauty. Because if you see truth and beauty per se, you see the oneness of all life. You understand that everything is one, and if you identify with all, then compassion is the sole motivation for anything in life. Compassion then becomes the highest law of conduct. Like Blavatsky expresses in The Voice of the Silence, it is the law of laws. By expressing truth and beauty, we are the instrument of this law of laws. We help nature and work on with her. It is exactly how the Lodge of Wisdom and Compassion works. Identifying with oneness, the one truth, beauty, or Theosophia, our teachers choose to share their wisdom with all living beings. Compassion is their one motive, their rule of conduct, their law to spread their wisdom. And to share their wisdom in its purest form, they identify with us, to bring us the essence of what we need to help ourselves. Before and in the time of the mystery schools, they taught us the sciences, philosophies, and forms of art as part of the wisdom religion or Theosophia. In modern times, they are sending us messengers, such as H.P. Blavatsky, to spread truth and beauty through compassion, all with the goal to uplift us to their level and beyond. So now that we have discussed what truth and beauty are, and why compassion is the expression of truth and beauty, we can ask ourselves, well, how do we express truth and beauty through compassion? What does it mean? Well, it is worthwhile to look a little closer at the great teachers of mankind, the messengers of truth and beauty, like Buddha, Lao Tse, or Plato, and to see how they worked. They spread their wisdom in the most durable and compassionate form, namely by showing us how to find truth and beauty within ourselves. It is the most durable and compassionate, because once we are awakened to the inner wisdom that is found in our heart, we can find all solutions to life riddles ourselves. Secondly, they brought wisdom in its purest form. They went back to the core principles of the teachings, building upon and relating to traditional teachings to show the universality of what they brought. It is what the Buddha did with the Hindu tradition, Jesus with the Jewish tradition, Plato with Pythagorean teachings, etc. And they adapted their presentation to the time and culture of their days. They used the language, examples, and metaphors to get their message across, but without sacrificing the original meaning and intent. By the awakening of their inner faculties, their buddhimanas, the messengers created a direct link with the hierarchy of compassion. They have given up their own progress in order to help us in our evolution whenever we are ready to receive their inspiration. And when we really resonate with their compassion and wisdom, or Theosophical, they will enable us to tap directly from the same source. They help us with accelerating our self-directed evolution, or in other words, by initiation. It is like electricity, and I know that it's still a thing that is being worked on in this country. Instead of just linking to a point that is near, we have to offer a good grid to link people directly to the energy source, to the power plant, so they will have a continuous source of pure power for themselves that they can really rely on. And I think that is exactly our job as Theosophists. As we are inspired by the truth and beauty of Theosophy, the divine wisdom, the highest knowledge of our hierarchy, and understanding oneness, we have to uplift the whole. We cannot keep it for ourselves. We have to work for uplifting the whole. And understanding the position of our brothers who still suffer because they fail to see truth and beauty, we will only want to work harder. Now, how to do this? Well, of course, we can follow the example of our teachers exactly. We develop a clear vision on how to solve the problems of today and share our knowledge, not out of feeling sorry for others, but by resonating with their highest aspects. Because when they connect with their inner wisdom, they know what is right. And if we do our job well, we awaken the buddhimanas of the other, and by doing so, the other can become a channel for inspiration himself. And a perfect touchstone that we can provide others, and that anyone can understand and use, is the idea of identifying with oneness. In our everyday life, are our thoughts and acts in line with the whole? Or are they out of self-interest? And we can learn to identify with a larger and larger whole. Maybe for someone, oneness means identification just with his own family. For another, it implies identification with his city or country. And another is even able to see and act from the idea of the oneness of humanity. But on whatever level someone is at, this is the never-failing touchstone to answer what is right. And if we think and act compassionately, we spread wisdom in its purest form. First by example, and if necessary, using words. And at the core of the Theosophia, which means at the core of all great religions and philosophies, which means at the core, I said that already, at the core of all great religions and philosophies, there are basic axiomas, the three fundamental propositions, or their elaborated form of the 7 jewels of wisdom, such as the teachings of reincarnation and karma. These are principles that suffice to find solutions to all problems in life independently. Now our job is to translate these simple and beautiful ideas into modern language that fit to our time and culture, in order to awaken others to the truth and beauty that is there. And we really need each other to do this job, to give Theosophy its place in the minds and hearts of our fellow men. If Theosophists join forces, and if we cooperate, we can do a better job. Now, one example of global Theosophical cooperation is ITC. ITC, standing for International Theosophy Conferences, is a platform where Theosophists from all Theosophical organizations meet. It is not another Theosophical organization, but a platform where we support each other as Theosophists in doing our duty. Each year, a conference is organized, and this year it will be at the headquarters of the Theosophical Society of America, the Olcott Center in Wheaton, and it is planned just after the Summer National Convention of the TSFA, so it makes a nice combination. So why this example? With ITC, we create working conferences in which Theosophical study is done in order to answer to today's problems. A hot topic is selected, like the subject of depression. Okay. Let's. So I used ITC as an example. And because what we do there is we select a hot topic, for instance, like the subject of depression, which still there are millions of people suffering as well as in the West as in the East. What we do is we study and select the relevant theosophical principles that can help to uncover the underlying causes and to formulate sustainable solution perspectives. We then translate these into modern language, so all Theosophists can use these to inspire others in their public meetings, lectures, and writings. This is a time that is the best for New Year's resolutions. The wisdom that Theosophy offers is more than enough to solve all the world's problems. We have all the knowledge that we need, right here, right now. So let us work together to spread the truth and beauty of Theosophy in today's world. Thank you.
Thank you, Erwin, for painting that wonderful paint of the beauty. Like a Dutch painter, you know how to express light from painting. Thank you for explaining us the rationale of truth. Thank you for remembering us the law of the law, which is compassion. And thank you to redirect everything back to the center, which is the oneness. Now we move to the second lecture today. And our lecturer is Kathy Gann. She is from Denver, Colorado in the US. She has been a TS member since 1996. She joined the TS at the first meeting she attended because she knew she was home. She was back to home. Since then, she has served as secretary of her local branch. She served as on the board of the Theosophical Order of Service in the USA. And she is currently serving as vice president of the Theosophical Society in America. She is interested in finding a way to move to a practical theosophy, and she would also like to find a way to bring theosophy to the children of today. So she will talk about this morning about the experience of beauty as a pathway to our higher self. Kathy, please.
Thank you. Good morning, esteemed President Tim Boyd, Mrs. Lily Boyd, brothers and sisters. Sometimes we look out into the world with all its ugliness, violence, greed, and separativeness, and it can be painful. We might even feel that we don't fit into this world as it currently stands, but we can take that feeling, we can turn it around, and we can use it to find our purpose, our cause, and our reason for being in the world. Someone once said that if you feel you don't fit into this world, it's because you're here to create a new one. This is an important idea because it takes a negative interpretation of the world situation, turns it around, and creates purpose. I'd like to explore how we can use the experience of beauty to help fulfill our purpose and to help us grow into our fullest and truest potential. This is such an appealing idea because the experience of beauty is an enjoyable experience. If we can grow through it and come to express more of our higher selves, then that's really good news. There's a lovely idea that expresses the journey we're on. It says that we're in the process of becoming what we have always been. What's meant by this is becoming what we have always been in potential, at the deepest core of our being. Happily, experiences of beauty can help us with this journey. They can help us reach that goal. In the 1939 movie, The Wizard of Oz, a girl named Dorothy and her companions followed a yellow brick road to find the wizard, which they mistakenly believed at first to be someone outside of themselves, something external. They envisioned the wizard as a magical man who would make all their wishes and dreams come true. Ultimately, they learned, as we all must learn, that the only true wizard was inside of themselves all along. Just for fun for today, we might call it the wizard within, meaning the deepest essence of our being, the very heart of who we truly are deep inside. In making the journey, we could say in theosophical terms that Dorothy and her friends were being led from the unreal to the real. That's a mantra that we use very often. From the unreal, lead me to the real. Of course, we are not talking about a literal journey or traversing some sort of geographical distance from here to there. The journey is simply a metaphor that we use to describe a process of becoming, a process of changing our inner vibratory qualities, of changing our frequency. As we change our frequency from lower to higher, we are gradually attuning ourselves to the frequency at which our higher self exists. We're gradually becoming more like it. This may sound like a scientific process, and that is one way to see it, but it's really a feeling process, a way of feeling more inspired, more uplifted, of naturally wanting to turn our attention to higher things. It has long been known that the way to move from the unreal to the real is really rather simple. We simply focus our attention on that which is real, and we do that as often as we can, in as many different ways as we can. We simply focus on that which is highest, most transcendent, and most beautiful, because those experiences naturally and effortlessly transport us to a higher state of consciousness where we're closer to that which is real. Saints and sages have known this for longer than we can imagine. Theosophists know this, and in the outer mundane world, there are people who know this. Many of you may be familiar with a small-sized little magazine that's been published for many decades in many countries in the world. In the US, it's known as the Reader's Digest, and they often publish interviews with remarkable people. In the late 1960s, they published an interview with a man who worked for the US government. His job was to discern the difference between real money, real currency, and counterfeit or fake currency. Whenever there was any doubt among other experts about whether some money was real or counterfeit, it would go to him, and his was the final word, so great was his expertise. The interviewer asked him how he had come to develop such a high level of expertise. She said, "What do? Do you sit at your desk all day studying counterfeit money?" He said, "No, I sit at my desk all day studying real money." He explained that by studying real money all day, then when something counterfeit was put in front of him, he could spot it immediately. It just jumped right out at him. Wisdom teachings tell us exactly the same thing. To be led from the unreal to the real, in other words, from that which is coarse and brash to that which is transcendent and beautiful, we simply have to focus our attention on that which is real. Beauty is real, with a capital R, or perhaps all capital letters. We can't always summons or demand an experience of beauty, but at a minimum, we can keep ourselves open to it in our hearts and in our minds. As we move through our day, we can invite beauty into our experience simply by looking for it, and certainly by appreciating it when something beautiful does come to our attention. Think about a time when you suddenly notice the colors of an amazingly beautiful and colorful sunset or sunrise. In that moment when you experience just the pure awe of it, you were closer to your higher self at that moment than at most times in your life. You were closer and you experienced a little more of that which is real. The experience of beauty can happen very unexpectedly as long as we keep ourselves open to it. In the diary of Anne Frank, she spoke about an unexpected experience of beauty. One morning she was in the bathroom and a strand of her hair had fallen into the sink. She was struck by the beauty of the graceful curves of the hair as it adhered to the sink. Unfortunately, she was not able to convince the others in hiding with her that hair in the sink was a thing of beauty. But it was something that struck her, and this is something that happens very often with experiences of beauty. You might find something very beautiful, and others just don't see it. An experience of beauty changes us from within. It changes us even just a little bit, and we're never quite the same again. There is a book called Beauty in the Soul, written by Piero Ferrucci, an Italian author. In the book, he tells the story of a time when he was transformed from within by an experience of beauty. First, a bit of background. In 1972, two statues from a 2,000-year-old shipwreck were found by a diver. They were raised to the surface and renovated to their original beauty. They represent two young men. They are perhaps warriors or athletes, nobody is sure. They look rather similar, but one has a very calm, serene expression on his face, and one looks just a bit more aggressive. They are known as the Riace warriors. They came to be displayed at a museum in Florence, Italy, which is where Piero Ferrucci lives. The museum was in a public square known as the Piazza della Santissima Annunziata, one of the most beautiful squares in the world. Piero said that this square was so beautiful he felt it was the home of the Florentine Renaissance at its greatest splendor. He had a friend, also from Florence, who also felt this square to be incredibly beautiful. his friend went to see the statues in the museum. And he said that when he came out into this square that he had always thought was so beautiful, now it just looked old and decadent to him. And Piero couldn't understand that. Something certainly can't just suddenly lose its beauty, can it? Well, later, Piero went to see the statues for himself. He said he was dazzled. He said there was a powerful energy that emanated from the statues that profoundly affected him and everyone else present. He said he was transported into another world, a universal world belonging to all people, all times, all cultures. He was experiencing genuine awe, and he said that everything superfluous, all lower ideas just seemed to fall away. All his cultural prejudices, all his past experiences, all his ideas about what was beautiful and what wasn't, all fell away. He said he was purified and transported to the essence of things. And when he left the exhibit and walked out into that square, indeed it did look old and decadent to him too. Fortunately, when he returned to the square a few days later, once again it looked beautiful to him. But you see, for a little while, his perceptions about beauty were altered, as though a veil had been drawn back, and the experience brought him just a little closer to that which is real, a little closer to that which is highest within him. And this experience happened to him because beauty is real. Thus far, we've been talking about the beauty of form, but we can't always be in a place where we find transcendently beautiful forms. Sometimes we're inside or we're working, and those are the times when we most need experiences of beauty. Luckily, there are so many different kinds of beauty that we will never run short. In fact, we could probably explore the different kinds of beauty, and we could fill these conferences year after year. One type of other beauty that comes to mind is the beauty of human kindness, empathy, compassion. If we could somehow ask Madame Blavatsky about this, I think she would say that altruism is one of the most beautiful things in the world. When we perform altruistic acts of kindness without thinking about whether there's a benefit to ourselves, we embody a sort of archetypal beauty, and at least for a time, we are truer expressions of our higher selves. In other words, we move from the unreal toward that which is real. In 2017, the Theosophical Order of Service in the U.S. ran what we called a campaign for kindness in the month of October. All of the acts of kindness were reported anonymously, and I want to share some of them with you because they illustrate the extraordinary power of beauty, of beautiful, everyday, altruistic kindnesses. A man who works full-time said that on his day off, he provides free plumbing and electrical services to anybody who needs it in his community. And he said that there are a lot of elderly people in his community, so as he puts it, he has been busier than busy. Several years ago, a TS member began carrying in the trash cans of her neighbors after the trash was picked up each week. She did this just because she thought it would make life a little bit easier for her elderly neighbors and for those who work. One person rescued some earthworms that had washed onto the sidewalk after a heavy rainstorm. She said they would have baked to death had they been left in the sun. So she just picked them up and put them on the grass so that they could burrow back down into the dirt. There was a young woman very ill with kidney problems. She was on dialysis, and even so, she pushed herself very hard so that she could start a support group to help others. One woman said she likes to make little jokes with her coworkers to refocus their attention away from insignificant things and annoyances to loftier things. This works, and she said it fosters good feelings among her coworkers. One man told about how each fall he donates dictionaries to third grade students at 27 different classrooms in his city, or 27 different schools in his city. He stays long enough to teach the kids how to use their dictionaries just because he thinks it's important for young children to learn how to use dictionaries. A woman who spends time on Facebook often sees posts about rescued animals in need of costly veterinarian care. She can't always send money, so sometimes she helps by sending long-distance Reiki or by doing a Ho'oponopono prayer, which is a prayer from Polynesian spirituality. A lady who takes the bus to and from work every day said that she made a point of turning around and just waving at the bus driver every night when she gets off the bus. How many people do that? Can you imagine how nicely that affected the bus driver, though, knowing that he was seen and appreciated every day? It's such a simple act, but such a big effect. One woman told about a friend who was very ill, and his birthday was coming near. She alerted all of his friends and asked them to call him on the phone rather than just posting happy birthday on Facebook. She said he was thrilled to talk to so many of his friends when he normally wouldn't have. She said, "I think these things really matter. I'm sure he felt the love." Those are just a few of the acts of kindness reported by your fellow Theosophists. In performing those acts of kindness, I don't think we would say that the people were having an experience of beauty, but we could say that they embodied true beauty. This is the power of beauty, and it's real. When we want to be led from the unreal to the real and be truer expressions of our higher selves, acts of kindness is a method that cannot fail. One of the most obvious and pleasant ways to have an experience of beauty is through music. I have a friend who is a pianist and composer, and he believes that music creates a bridge between the doing and the being in life. In our outer everyday lives, the life of what we call our personality, we always seem to be busy doing things, and when we're multitasking, we're busy doing multiple things. So when we talk about doing, we're talking about our ordinary, everyday way of living in the world. But when we talk about being, we're talking about a higher, more transcendent part of us, such as we are functioning through in meditation, and all that's left of us is pure being. So if music serves as a bridge between our outer personality and that inner transcendent state of pure being, is that not the same thing as saying that music serves as a bridge which we can traverse to arrive at a transcendent state of being? In other words, we've come closer to our higher selves. There's an interesting quality to music, especially when we share the experience with others. Have you ever been at a concert and you're feeling very uplifted by the music, or you're really enjoying the music, and you turn to your companion and you see through their eyes, without any words at all, that they're experiencing the same thing? With no words at all, just through the eyes, your friend communicates to you, "Oh yes, I get it. I'm experiencing exactly what you are." And suddenly the experience of the music is all the richer for you for having shared it with your friend. No matter how stark our outer apparent differences are, we can all come together and find our common core, our unity, simply by enjoying music together. If I hear a song sung in another language, I might need an interpreter to tell me what the lyrics mean, but I don't need an interpreter to tell me about the energy of the song, whether it's a sad song or a happy song or a somber song. That's something that we experience with our hearts. And if we're experiencing it together, suddenly your religion doesn't matter to me, nor does your culture, your socioeconomic position, nor do your political opinions. All that matters when people get together is that they are sharing an experience of beautiful music. Jeffrey Hodson said that when a composer creates a new piece of music, the composer's idea combines with the superphysical effect of the music almost to create like a new form, a new body, and that a bit of the composer's higher life and consciousness ensouls that form so that a new little entity is created, and he said it's actually a relatively permanent entity. That means that every time that song is performed, the performers are coming into touch with the composer's higher life and consciousness. A real link is formed. And time and space don't matter in this analysis. So a pianist playing Mozart today is actually contacting Mozart's higher life and consciousness. I think that's a very exciting idea. But you don't have to take Jeffrey Hodson's word for it. There's an experiment of sorts that you can perform on your own when you're alone and you have a little quiet time. Select a piece of instrumental music that you find uplifting. It might be classical music or some other genre. The genre doesn't matter as long as the music is uplifting to you. Then play the music, and while it is being played, close your eyes and think of someone that you love very, very much with all your heart. The promise of this experiment is that if you will do this, you will hear every single thing that the composer had to say. This is a remarkably powerful experiment that I learned from a musician named Benjamin Zander, the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. He tells a story that illustrates the power of music to transcend everything that we might think of as a barrier between people, and not only touch, but actually transform the hearts of people who seem very different on the outside. He conducts workshops around the world, typically for college students and business professionals. But once he found himself performing his workshop for a group of high school students at an inner city high school in a city in Northern Ireland. Now, normally in his workshops, he comes to a point where he conducts the experiment that I just talked to you about, and he uses a particularly lovely Chopin piece. He plays it live on the piano. He plays it exquisitely while the people close their eyes and think of someone they love. In this high school setting, where the reality of those students every day was guns, violence, drugs, and gangs, he came to that point in the workshop where he normally does the Chopin experiment, and he wondered how that would work with these high school students. Would they be able to get any appreciation at all out of Chopin? But he did the experiment as usual, played the Chopin, and closed the workshop. A couple days later, one of the boys in the workshop approached him. The boy was about 16, and he explained that a year earlier, his little brother had been shot and killed by a gang. For some reason, he had never been able to cry for his brother. And the boy said, "But when you played that shopping piece," he said, "it was my brother I was thinking of, and it felt really good to finally be able to cry for my brother." And that's when Benjamin knew that if that boy, with his challenges and his background, could understand Chopin that completely, that deeply, then everybody could understand it. The boy didn't understand Chopin intellectually. He didn't understand it with his mind. He was processing it with his heart, with the entirety of his being. That's the power of beautiful music. It does indeed create a bridge, not only between people, it does do that, but also between our outer, everyday doing selves and also our inner transcendent being, our higher selves. And when this happens, we really have come home in the truest sense, and we find that, at least for the moment, we have become a higher expression and a fuller expression of that which we have always been, our higher selves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy, for really emphasizing and focalizing the expression of beauty and truth toward a real life experience, real life context. That's something which we all know, that any kind act, any smile, any altruistic action is demonstrating beauty and truth without having to discuss about it. That's the language of the heart, very clearly. And thank you also to bring the music as an expression of beauty. Like any art, music does not use the mental aspect to communicate. It is a direct communication of beauty. So in behalf of everyone here, I want to thank you, our two lecturers today. Thank you very much. And I declare this session closed, but don't move. We have some announcement now.
First, a lost piece. There is a memory card which was found on the street in front of the administration building. It might include some interesting content. Now, you know this daily news bulletin, which comes each day. You can find it in the inquiry office. It is 3 rupees per number. And I want to take some of these today's programs. Next session, 9:30, will be questions and answers. And then after that, there will be, after the lunch, there will be 1:30 to 3 p.m. programs, cultural activities in Olcott Memorial Higher Secondary School. Excuse me. And they will have a puppet show. It is the first time that they do it, so please go and enjoy. They always do very great performances. And then in the afternoon, we go to the parallel sessions. They are same place, same sessions, same subjects, same leaders of the sessions. But you can now change where you want to join. Either chanting workshop on the headquarters hall, or meditation workshop on the Blavatsky bungalow, or these spiritual songs, Hebrew songs in here Adyar Theater, or discussing about Theosophical education in Library Hall. 2 days ago we had these same parallel sessions, and some of the sessions were full, that even not everybody could even enter. But let's try now, same. It means that they are interesting enough. And in the 5 p.m. we have public lecture by our president, Tim Boyd. And 7:30 p.m. we have a Veena concert. So, have a good day. See you soon.